Hi. One of the books I read this semester was Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robinson. And I chose this book at first because it had a connection with something I find really close to my heart. And this book, this book is about John. It's his autobiography as a kid with Asperger's. And someone in my family has Asperger's, so I thought it would be interesting to find out other people's experiences with Asperger's and how they live their lives. I knew that Asperger's was a form of highly functioning autism, and I knew how it has affected my family, but I wanted to know kind of beyond that because my knowledge is really limited to just this scenario. And I wanted to really look at the inner workings of an Aspergerian mind and see how their thought processes were different than ours. This book read a lot like realistic fiction. It was 100% a narrative about his life. It was his story, him putting it out into the world. And I thought the vocabulary was really easy to understand, and it was an easy book to read. I got through it fairly quickly. So it's not hard to comprehend at all. And this book was really nice because a lot of parts of it had me laughing, and it was really nostalgic finding things from his life that matched my own, and I could connect to my family members, things that have happened to both of us. And this book is good for people who want to know more about Asperger's, but in a more relaxed manner instead of textbook, this is what you look for, this is what it is. It tells kind of a humanizing story. It gives a face to the disorder, and I think that's really important for things like this. Just open up the conversations with books like this, and John Elder Robinson did a really good job. He created his own narrative in a way that anyone could understand and relate to, but it still had those aspects of Asperger's that you knew were different, and you could then understand why he thought like that, why it's still okay, and why he's not seen as dangerous, or he shouldn't be at least. And one part of the book that really stuck out to me was when he was asking someone if there was a cure to Asperger's, and the person responded, "No, you don't need a cure, it's just how you are." And that really stuck home to me because people assume that disorders such as Asperger's need to be cured, and there is something that are harming our society, but in reality, it's not doing any harm, and these people are just different, and if we learn to think how they think and figure out how they can function the best in society, then they will be able to integrate themselves more efficiently and be able to work well with others. Since this is a narrative, there's not really any research in this book, but this whole book could be considered kind of a case study on John's own life. He did this himself, however, so he is fairly biased. But as someone with Asperger's, he looks at it with a really logical and objective point of view, and he talks about the different events that shaped his life and how Asperger's shaped those events and the things that happened as a result. He goes through his life with a kind of trial and error mentality, even from a young age. He has this kind of scientific method where, as a child, he knows that petting animals is good and that's what animals like. So he tries this on a girl in the playground, but she doesn't seem to like it. So then he tries something else, and eventually he does figure out how to make friends a lot later down the road, but it's with this kind of trial and error mentality that you don't really see in other kids that you notice the differences with John from an early age that he talks about and how this isolated him from others and how he felt about this, because it's a common myth that Asperger's people don't have feelings, and he counters this by sharing his story and saying, "Hey, I did want to have friends, I did try, but I couldn't, and I didn't understand why until much later." Another aspect is how he treated his brother, whom he renamed Varmint. He treated him in kind of a similar way. He liked to train him, and he would get him to read very quickly. He wanted to get him to walk as fast as he could, and he was proud when he did, but when he didn't quite understand why he couldn't do it yet. And along with the renaming his brother, he liked to rename things, anything. And this was just another aspect of his personality that people deemed as quirky or weird, but were really just because of his Asperger's. And even in this book, he touches on finding love as someone with Asperger's and his struggles between divorce and being married again, and how it is possible, and he did work out his life in the end. Even with all of his awkwardness as a child, as an adult, he kind of learned the ins and outs of society and how to interact with others by fitting in and going against his original Aspergerian traits that others kind of look down upon. And this kind of comes together in the fact that he does get a job. At first, he is a sound engineer, and then he begins making exploding guitars with cool effects for the band Kiss, and he kind of fits in with a quirkier crowd because they kind of accept him more as a person for who he is, but he still doesn't really connect with them as much, and he feels a disconnect, but he doesn't really mind because he gets to do what he loves, so he keeps working at it. And eventually he does go into a corporate business, but he finds that it's too stifling for his creativity and what he wants to get done, so he quits that job as well. One part of this book that some people may not like is the extreme attention to detail in some cases. For sometimes when he goes on about how he made a toy, a prank, or even a guitar, he goes into such extreme detail that someone who isn't familiar with the topic is kind of confused and might want to skip over. But this is also part of an Aspergerian trait because he's really focused on what he loves, and this is what he loves, so he wants to share it with everyone. And I think this gave a really interesting voice to the book, and you could really hear the author shining through. But this may bore some people, so that's one thing to look out for. And one negative aspect of this book is it's solely focused on him. If you're looking for a book about Asperger's in general, then this is probably not the book for you because it only tells his story, and it leads to the risk of generalizations being made, and it's very reductionist if you only read this book. But nevertheless, it's a good narrative to understand one person's story. So overall, I really recommend this book to anyone who's interested, and thank you for watching. Bye!